White youth must choose sides now. We must either fight on the side of the oppressed or be on the side of the oppressor.
What is going on? So today I want to talk a little bit about the Black Lives Matter movement and how history is kind of repeating itself a little bit. So I want to do that by playing a little clip from a movie called The Weather Underground. It's this movie right here. And it was made in, what year did that say? 2002. It actually won an Academy Award. I don't know if that means anything to you. You know, some people liked it, but this is an amazing movie. You can actually find a copy of it on YouTube. It takes place in the 70s, and most of the movie is just archival footage from that time. And they also got a lot of the founders and co-founders of this group called the Weather Underground to kind of tell their story. And it takes place in the 70s. You know, this is during the counterculture, and this group is one of the more radical, more troubling groups, you could say, that came out of this time. And they were really opposed to the Vietnam War. And they felt like their peaceful protests were falling on deaf ears and that they needed to take things into their own hands. And so they started planting bombs and blowing up shit, starting fires. Their main objective was, if we can't get people to pay attention to the Vietnam War, what we need to do is bring the war back home. And so they started creating all this violence and chaos, hoping that people would see that this kind of violence is crazy and that we should have sympathy for the violence that we're doing overseas, and that we need to stop this, end the war. And the Vietnam War. It's a fascinating story, and there's many connections actually between this group and what we're seeing today. In fact, so much so that even one of the leaders, the founders of the Weather Underground group, Bill Ayers, he compared Weather Underground days to Black Lives Matter era. This is a little podcast that where you can hear him talk about that. So even the founder kind of has made the connection. And today I want to show you one of the ways. Here is one of the leaders talking about violence. So we're going to play this clip and then we're going to talk just a little bit.
Violence can mean a lot of different things. We felt that doing nothing in a period of repressive violence is itself a form of violence. That's really the part that I think is the hardest for people to understand. That if you sit in your house and live your white life and go to your white job and allow the country that you live in to murder people and to commit genocide, and you sit there and you don't do anything about it, that's violence.
So does any of that sound familiar? I think the version of this in 2020 that we're hearing is silence is violence, or white silence is violence. And notice she mentioned white also. There's definitely race aspects to the Weather Underground group that is worth exploring, but it's not for this video. Right now I want to just focus on the violence. In their world view, the state is the greatest oppressor, and the state is the biggest committer of violence, and that the only way to respond to that is through other acts of violence, and that their violence is justified because they are coming from a place of oppression. And so they, and I mean, you're seeing this today with all of the riots. You can see that the violence that they're committing, there's no remorse, no shame in any of the acts that are going on. And I mean, how could there be? They think they're the good guys. They think they're on the side of justice, goodness. And so this is what we're dealing with. And I think you're starting to see now that public opinion for BLM is starting to really shift. And I think the reason why is the same reason why the Weather Underground group ultimately kind of faded away as well. And I want to play another clip where one of the co-founders says in his own words what happened.
We felt that more and more people would be attracted to the revolutionary violence of the Weather Underground and of the other groups. What I began to discover was that Americans are taught again and again from a very early age that the only violence, that all violence which is not sanctioned by the government is either criminal or mentally ill. And so our violence was categorized as that, criminal and mentally ill.
There we go. Now, I think that you're starting to see that with the Black Lives Matter movement. I think it's starting to get categorized like that. I think they're starting to lose a lot of favor in the eyes of the public. And I even had Don Lemon and I think it was Cuomo just a couple days ago came out and said it's showing up in the polls. And so they're aware of it. They know that it's not doing Biden any favors. Anyway, violence. I think it's interesting. I think, one of the more fascinating aspects of this is just how the effects it has on human nature when you think that you are the good guys. You can justify a lot of evil when you think you're in the right. And I think the Weather Underground group, they had a lot of good intentions. I actually agree with them. They should have ended the Vietnam War. But the way to get the Vietnam War to end was not by blowing up buildings back here at home, destroying businesses, and ruining people's lives. And that's how I feel about the BLM movement as well. It's that saying, you can't repay evil with evil, or two wrongs don't make a right. You can't really you can use violence and force to get your way, but that's where you lose me. And so I hope you enjoyed this. It's a great movie, highly recommend. There's some other ties in there between the two groups that I wish I could dive into maybe in some other videos, but the race angle, they both are really into identity politics, and also the Marxist communist ties. The Weather Underground group published a book called The Prairie Fire, which sold like 3,000 copies, but it was like their communist manifesto. And BLM definitely has the organization has a lot of Marxist goals and ties, down to their own leaders saying that they're trained Marxists. I hope you enjoyed this. This movie's great. Hope you have a great day. Peace.